All right. I think we're operational. Yeah. I'm gonna give it just a second. It's not quite 9 o'clock yet. But yeah, if you join, say hi. I put a link to the code sandbox in there, so yeah. Today is gonna be exciting again. Another day where I'll be doing stuff that I know nothing about. So yeah, we got 2 minutes. $45. Hey, Adam. Good morning. How are you doing this morning? Hello, John. Welcome. Welcome. Starting in just a handful of seconds. This will be fun. Yeah, hit me up if you. This is going to be new territory for me. I'm not sure if we'll be able to make, since these are like performance-y things, I'm not sure that we'll be able to make like great use of these. But you never know. At least we might learn how they work. All right. It's always such a good reminder to turn these things off. All right, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning. I'm glad you're here. Today's going to be another kind of bumping around the edges day for me. I am not too familiar with what we're going to tackle today. So we did use effect on Monday, or sorry, use state on Monday, Tuesday, use effect, use context. I just threw those into a playlist if you wanted to watch any of those or missed them. We did use reducer yesterday, and today I was hoping to look at these three. Now these are. I'm doing good, Adam. Thank you for asking. Doing good. I wish that y'all could see me like moments before I do this, because I'm like brushing my teeth real fast. Not that that matters here, but just washing my hair and getting ready real fast. Got myself some water. Another hydro flask. I I should really ask them if they do sponsorships for these kinds of things. Oh yeah. I always forget to do that. The alt click, Adam says to alt click the notifications. I always forget to do that. But yeah, that is brilliant. So it just kind of turns off the notifications. I have not built it into my muscle memory yet. But maybe now that you reminded me live, I'll think about it. So we did use reducer yesterday. That was very educational for me, because I am not one who uses reducers often. But I really did like this. This is really awesome. And I could see how this would be significantly better than kind of as we were talking about in use state, that you can mask some of that API stuff. It seems like use reducer would kind of does that by default. So like the expectation is that you are going to expose actions, as opposed to like use state, where you're going to be like just updating this one thing. So that was super interesting to me. So today we're going to focus on these three. Again, I don't know what that is about. And then these two are just kind of scheduling things for use effect, things that in an app the size that we're building, it might be almost impossible to determine how that scheduling happens. But if you had a more robust app, maybe you would see a bigger difference. Again, that's going to be the case today too, where we're not going to actually see the performance difference from these things. Yeah, man, Hydro Flask, the best. This one's great. I had a white one of the, what's this? This is a 32 ounce. I had the bigger one. It's like 40 ounce. I don't know. It was slightly bigger and it was white, and I loved it, and I left it at a park, and it sucks. So I stole this one from my wife. Yeah. So this is what we're going to focus on today. These, as far as what I've seen, are pretty similar. They just have, they're just called differently, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then I've never even looked at useRef. So I guess let's just go in order this morning, and see what we can learn. So use callback. So we would set a variable that memoizes this callback. And then it's kind of has that same type of signature. So, and we call it useCallback. And it looks like it has like a similar signature as useEffect, with this kind of array of values as the second argument, the ones to track for changes. And so it returns a memoized callback. They have a link here, so I'm curious what that is. Let's follow that. See, in computing, memoization is an optimization technique used primarily to speed up computer programs by storing the result of expensive function calls and returning the cached result when the same inputs occur again. Memoization has also been used in other contexts and for purposes other than speed gains, such as simple mutually recursive descendant parsing. Okay, so already I'm already lost. So this part's for people smarter than me. My understanding is that basically you track the inputs, and then if like the inputs don't change, then if you have pure functions, then you know that the result of this is going to be the same. So you just return the answer from the previous time. That's my understanding of memoization. And that seems to be at least a decent mental model for the API that we have here. So let's see. So pass an inline callback, an array of inputs. Okay. So it looks like this might be, in this case, mandatory, unlike optional in useEffect, which would make sense because if you're using this instead of just using the callback directly, you're using it to memoize this thing. So you need to pass in the inputs. useCallback will return a memoized version of the callback that only changes if one of the inputs is changed. This is useful when passing callbacks to optimize children components that rely on reference equality to prevent unnecessary renders. Should component update. Now, I'm not typically like a big performance nut, so I actually didn't use should component update a lot. I found that in my cases, it caused more debugging problems than it was worth. Again, my work is I work a lot with designers, and it was just a real debugging nightmare for them a lot of times using components that I had exposed with should component update. I just kind of broke their mental model and like expectations. So I don't honestly use this optimization a lot. So I don't have a lot of context for you there. So yeah, so again, use callback, the function or an anonymous function that calls whatever our function we're memoizing is equivalent to useMemo. Okay, interesting. Yeah, so this is where the note on like useMemo. So again, these are just called slightly differently, which we'll tackle that one in a second. Okay, cool. So a note regarding those inputs. The array of inputs is not passed as arguments to the callback. Conceptually, though, that's what they represent. Every value referenced inside the callback should also appear in the inputs array. In the future, a sufficiently advanced compiler could create this array automatically. Oh, interesting. So basically, like the idea is that you would just use callback and this chunk, and then the compiler would add any of the arguments that you had. That would be nice. That'd be nice. It kind of makes me wonder if you could, and this is stupid, but like if you could just take the reference and then have the second argument be the things to apply onto that function. But this is fine. And it's what we got. So I'm more than happy with it. Okay, cool. So I'm going to pull that in and I'm going to see how we can kind of tinker with it. So let's see. I'm going to take use callback, use memo. useRef. Okay, so what do we have here? Okay, so the way this is formed right now, I'm getting these little like ESLint errors, leads me to believe that I am supposed to put it inside of my function component like that, which would make sense. This is a hook. So those need to go inside of components unless they're inside of other functions. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Adam says he likes how it's like simplified, where this like second thing is like, if these things change, then do the thing. Yeah, it's a really nice mental model, and I agree. And I also, like you said, I like the symmetry between this and use effect. So you know, as you learn to use one, you know how to use the others. It's good. It's really good. They did a good job. So use callback. I think what I'm gonna do right now is, I mean, this is just kind of my like default, kind of like super basic example of anything is like having like a greeting component that takes a name, or let's say it takes two names. So first, what name first? First name. Ugh. Let me get more space here. Yeah, and again, this is going to be so as I had as I mentioned, this is not going to be. I'm going to show you how these things work, or I'm going to explore how these things work, but this is not a good case for them. In really, what I would do in like real life is I would wait until I have a performance problem, until I have like found a performance problem, or like use my profiler to discover that something could be improved, and then I would add this. I would never do something like this by default. This is just to explore, and I don't have a significantly large enough app to explore. So again, so let's say, also just for reference, so I actually don't have these installed, so you can actually watch me install these because I don't use this. I use Firefox typically, but this one was cleaner for the display. So let's add this extension. So if you're not too familiar with this extension, these are all of the React tools, dev tools, and if we were on a React app, which I don't think this one is. We would see, oh, wow, I got an error. Oh, out of date version of React. Yes, that is true. I should probably fix that. So when you install these dev tools, you get this handy new thing, which isn't showing up here for whatever reason. Interesting. So they have some new profiler tools, and they're not showing up for me, and I'm not totally sure why. But anyway, they would normally be like right here. So, and I don't know if that's just because I'm on like using a production build, and it doesn't have access to those or what, but yes. Anyway, download those tools. There is a profiler in there. I will probably do a lesson at some point about the profilers. Also, Brian Vaughn gave a talk. He's the one who made it at ReactConf this year. So this is, again, these things like useCallback, useMemo are going to be things that you use only when you identify a problem, not as a first line of defense, which I'm doing right now just to explore. Okay, cool. So memorize callback. So let's just do something like this. So let's take, let's just structure these off. So first name, last name. Um, and then let's write a function called do something. Whoa. What happened? Word. Hey, Ruby. I have no idea what combinations of keystrokes that I hit accidentally to make that happen, but I do apologize. That sucked. Wow, bummer. Okay. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it needs to be in development mode. Yeah, I think maybe it doesn't profile the production build. Oh, outdated React. Yeah, that could be it too. That could absolutely be it. I do remember them saying that you had to be on a certain version of React. I think that site is on 16 something. If you have a site that it works with, post that in, and then I'll open it up so we can show off the profile there. I think, yeah, both of those could be the reason though. I definitely need to get my ass in gear and fix that. Okay, so we'll start from the outside in. Very sorry that happened. So I'm not even gonna say name this time. Oops. Function greeting props. Return. So let's see. So we're going to copy this out. Again, that goes in the component. So memoized callback. And I think we would just call that here. Memoized callback. Props.first. Props.last. Oop. I guess the order probably doesn't matter here. Okay, cool. Now let's define do something. And what we'll do is we're taking first and last, and we're gonna put those together like so. Use callback. I gotta pull that off. Okay, cool. Now I didn't call this right, because this is actually a memoized function. So I think that if I call that, it should show up. It does not. What I do, so const memoized callback equals. Oh yeah, dev mode. Dev mode. Let's see, did I spell anything wrong? Okay, so passing in first, last, comes in here as props. I'm calling that function with, so I'm giving it a function which calls this thing and changes if any of these props change. Get first and last, and I'm returning this template literal string with first and last interpolated out. Okay, let's try something else first. Okay, it should be working. Interesting. Let's see if there's any help for me on the docs. Okay, so memoize callback. Wondering if this is just not the right use for this, or not a right example. Console log debugging. Okay, so this is working. It's returning that value. So when we log out, do something of that. That's great. So let's take this whole memoization thing out for a second. Let's just make sure the function works. So, whoop. Okay. Okay, so do something. Memoize callback. Let's take these out. So we take our inputs out. Still nothing. Oh, do I need to? I've tried it recently and it works well when used with an input element. Oh, interesting. Oh, interesting. So should this be returned? So I'm wondering, so I guess this makes sense. So I guess the question is, maybe this is for effects, really? So right now I'm using it to get a return value. So I have to add this in here, but I wonder if maybe it's for memoizing other effects. That doesn't necessarily make sense because I would use effect for that. Yeah, unfortunately, the examples are a little bit sparse on what the ideal use of that is. So on change. Okay, so John's saying that a good example is on change use callback method. Okay, we can try that. Yeah, let's try that. Why not? Got nothing but time. Type text. I guess so. Will we use this then with state? If you can send me, John, if you could send me a code sandbox or whatever kind of thing, that might be a little bit easier. If you don't mind sending me that, then I can open it. I can open the link up here. Okay, cool. So let's come back to that. Let's skip ahead to useMemo. So yeah, so this is still an open question in my mind, but I think useMemo might be actually for what I'm trying to do here. So let's jump ahead to that for a second and we'll scoot back. So returns a memoized value, pass a create function, an array of inputs. useMemo will only recompute the memoized value when one of the inputs is changed. This optimization helps to avoid expensive calculations on every render. So if no array is provided, a new value will be computed every time. Okay, cool, no problem. That totally makes sense. Awesome, John posted a thing in. I'll get that in just a second. Okay, so let's change this to change what we got here to useMemo. I think maybe that is kind of a little bit more akin to what I'm doing right here. useMemo. Let's see. So again, it takes the function. Oh yeah, so it doesn't have the block, which kind of makes me think that, yeah, the other one is for other types of effects. Unexpected token. Yep, that's not right. Get that out of here. Use memo is not defined. Yep. Use memo. Memos. So we'll call this full name. And this one we don't have to call. It's just kind of we get a value implicitly from this, which is awesome. So again, this would not be a very good use of this. Now, this is going to re-render every time. I'm curious if we can test that in a simple way, or redoing something. And then kind of maybe I'll just use my regular trick of putting this in a function. Calling render every second, set interval internal. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, so that is recomputing every second as we expected. And so then what happens if we say props.first and props.last? Interesting. Cool. Okay, cool. So that works. So another way we could test that out is that, let's see, we'll hide this, and then I'm gonna render this. Oh, nope. See, I'm gonna render the greeting component directly. A way to see that this changed 3 times, I think, is just to give it different names. So let's try this. That should only do once. Yep, cool. So we see that it's memoized. So even though I'm calling render 4 times, it does that. So if I change this, it should do it a couple times. Oh yeah, so 3 times. So it renders this change, and then renders it back. If I do this again, it should be 4 times. Yep, cool. Cool. So that is awesome. That's doing exactly what it says on the tin, which I'm pleased with. So the nice thing about this, about useMemo, is that we can kind of just call it as just expected value in response. And so it occurs to me now that this is what I was thinking that useCallback was doing, which it is not. So so now for me, I know that useMemo is when I would want to get something as a value. So if I had some like really crazy computation on these names, that would be the case. And it is possible that I could do like, so I have, let's say I wanted to like uppercase those, and I had these extra functions, and maybe I spit out tens of thousands of names on a page. Actually, I wonder. Yeah, and in any case, maybe we have like a form that's spitting out tens of thousands of names, but then it's like it only re-renders when like other parts of the data change, and we want to kind of we have a bunch of functions that change or capitalize things or whatever, and we want to make sure that that only happens once for that part of it. That could be a good use for that. Okay, cool. So let's jump into the code sandbox that John sent us for the useCallback. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so we got useState, useCallback, and useEffect. And then let's jump down to the bottom. We're rendering app. we're taking a password, set password, on change, and trim from use input with a default value of empty string. Okay, cool. Let's look at use input real quick. So we jump up to use input, empty string, and options. Okay. So we have set, set state with the input, which unless we've passed something in, starts as an empty string, which I believe is what we're seeing here. Yep, cool. So then we get these two, we destructure these two values off of that, password and set password. On change, we're then, giving it a function to set the password with event target value. Now this is going to return a new function every time, I think, because we aren't passing inputs into it. That's fine. Let's see, let trim equals use callback. Oh, okay. So we're just taking the input, calling set password with a trimmed value. Okay, again, with no. Okay, cool. Return on change, password, set password, and trim. Okay, so we're returning kind of like an API for this thing. Okay, let's see what we got. So trims off extra white space, I think. So if I tab off of this, yeah, cool. It takes off that extra white space. Oh, it's like an OS 10 feature we can. So come back, double dot. Okay, cool. Yep, gotcha. Okay, cool. So we have set password. Oh, I see. Okay, so you're using useCallback to memoize the set passwords, which makes sense. We don't have any way, I don't have any way of getting in there to log out what we're doing. But that makes sense. Again, this is like one of those things where in any of these examples, we're gonna have a hard time actually seeing the result, because this is really something you'd be doing in your profiler. But okay, so I'm starting to see where this is, like how this is taking shape, where you would like have a callback that is like taking a value and then you're doing something with it. So in this case, what would you be putting in the arrays? Like, would you be putting this whole thing in there? So like e.target.value and i.trim. That seems weird. Or I guess no. Yeah, you wouldn't want to call that function to test the input, because then you're calling that function anyway. So yeah, so I guess we'd be putting I, and then yeah, e dot. Oh, but we don't have access to that. Interesting. Right, because this is just part of this function. It's not part of, like, we would need something in this scope. So I guess maybe if the input doesn't change. Yeah, I don't know. That's a big question mark in my mind, and I'm not sure that I have. I think that maybe in a future video, I would need to find something that was unperformant, that had these types of callbacks, and use the profiler to actually dive into why it was slow, and use callback to optimize those, to memorize those callbacks. Yeah. So sorry that this doesn't feel like a clear win yet. That is my fault. But useMemo, I think we were able to see visually that it does, like how those inputs track, and that we can do something even in a small scale like that, that we can kind of extract that. Let's look at useRef. Yeah, so I still have a big question mark in my head about useCallback. If as you are kind of starting to play with this in your app, you find something that is really like an amazing example of it, I'd love to see it. All right, useRef. So const ref container equals useRef of initial value. So I'm really curious what this actually does. useRef returns a mutable ref object whose .current property is initialized to the past argument initial value. Okay. The returned object will persist for the full lifetime of the component. All right. I definitely need to see that to get a better understanding of what any of that means. Let's see. Yep. Okay. Back to the chat. Okay, so I like that this one has an example at least, so that's helpful. A common use case is to access a child imperatively. Okay, that I understand. So when I need to do something imperatively with a child, I would reach for useRef, or do something imperatively with a child in a function component, I would use useRef. Note that useRef is useful for more than the ref attribute. It's handy for keeping any mutable value around, similar to how you'd use instance fields in classes. Is there something like instance variables? So I'm just following these to kind of get a better sense of what's going on. Yes. Ref object is a generic container whose current property is mutable and can hold any value, similar to instance property on a class. You can write it from inside useEffect. Okay, hold on a sec. I can't right now. I can do it in just a little bit though. Okay, give me like 20 minutes, okay? Okay.
I'll wait here.
No, don't wait here.
Why?
Because we got a bunch of, I'm working on something. Hey, Ruby. Hey, head up, please. See you in a bit. Sorry for the interruption. Let's see. So, okay, cool. So useEffect. Okay, cool. Let's I'll keep this open in case we need it. This is kind of interesting. Yeah. I'm definitely, like, when we're done, I'm going to be diving into this because that seems very interesting. Is this relevant to my interests? So I might actually, maybe next week, dive into a lot of this stuff. Looks like this could be handy for like drag and drop positioning business. Okay, let's just see if I can get it working. So useRef. So this is a really nice, simple example. So I'm just going to copy and paste that over and tinker with it, like we always do. Let's see. So how robust is this? Text input with focus button. Perfect. I will just take this whole thing. And then here in my app, I'll do text input with focus button. Oh, right. useRef is not defined. Yep. useRef. Okay, cool. So we have another input here. Michael. Awesome. Okay. Nice, simple example here. So let's kind of tinker around with it. So on button click. So this is what they were saying with the current. So we got to call this current value. So we have our reference, and then we call dot current is like the property that we access to call things on. So yeah, this example just kind of seems to do everything for me. So so let's look at the from the outset. So we have input, we're using ref, and we oh gotcha. Okay, so we define a variable, say useRef of null. And then when this gets rendered, I think that replaces that there. Okay, cool. Let's do another one of these. So let's say let's implement it up from scratch. Keep it around as a reference. But I just want to I need to get my fingers on it. We're gonna return seturn return. Right now we're just returning a fragment because there's going to be 2 elements nested in here, and let's put that input out first. Type equals text. Man, I'm having a hard go of it this morning. These ones are significantly harder to demo. So, yeah, thank you for helping me out and sticking around. Okay, so we got a text input, great, and then we need a button type button. And this is going to be focus the input. Okay. Okay, so now it's going to do nothing because it's not wired up to do anything. So we can add an on click, and this is going to handle click. We have to define that function, handle click. And what we need is we need a reference that we would call focus on. Now we don't have a reference yet, so this is where we would use useRef. Now it looks from the example that they've given us that we can't just kind of like create the ref. Like we wouldn't create the ref dynamically here. We need to allow that to happen in render. If we could create it dynamically here, we wouldn't have a use for ref at all. Now I do know that there was a way that you used to be able to do this in function components before. I think I actually have a video of that. I think I might. I'm gonna find it and then like paste a link to it. Let's see. It's a pretty old way of doing it, but functional components, I don't want to play all. Callback ref. So this is a video on how you could get a ref to the DOM element in a functional component or a function component a while ago. Kind of curious how that works. Okay, so we would do like let element equals null, and then we would pass in a ref, and I mean kind of a similar approach, honestly. Handle click. We define that function. So what does that look like in the end? Okay, cool. So we would element.inner text. Whoa. Okay, so this was possible before, but this you kind of had to do like a little bit of this, and so it's nice that they have like a little bit. They have a more thorough API, and it sounds like this is kind of makes it able to be passed around to children a little bit better. So cool. So let's do that. So we're going to say let's see, what was it? Input ref equals useRef for null. Input ref dot current as we what's I here current property dot focus, and then we need to this is bugging me. Cool. That was not too painful. I'd like to take this one step further just for my own satisfaction of seeing how these things can be. Let's see. Actually, that wouldn't make a difference. I was gonna say I was gonna put this into kind of create a component for this, but that wouldn't make a difference because I'd just be passing down the handler, which would be called in this context anyway. Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, so that's it. I'm trying to think of other uses. If you can think of another use for it, let me know. And before we close this thing down, I do apologize that this one was this whole set of, or this video kind of covered a bunch of APIs that were I was kind of tempted to not do this one at all, just because I know that these are a little bit more like performance-y oriented. But anyway, it is nice to know this is significantly better than the way that I had to do it before in my functional components. So I like that. I like that it is like kind of well documented and well defined. Let's see if they have that document forwarding refs. Can I make a ref to a functional component? Yeah, so anyway, so now, so in this doc right here is where they used to have that technique that I showed, that I kind of linked in the video. And now they're saying to use the use imperative methods hook. So anyway, that is, which is, oh, okay, cool. So yeah, so this is, oh, interesting. So this is telling you to wrap that element focus in that. Really interesting. Okay, cool. Well, this was kind of unsatisfying for me. I apologize. I think I haven't decided on a theme for next week, but I think next week is definitely going to be a lot more action oriented. I have a whole list of hooks that I need to make for my work, so I was thinking that I might do that. If that sounds interesting, we could do that. The idea that I was playing with is that I would actually kind of write the hooks that we need to write, kind of setting up a mono repo to kind of distribute all of those to our team. Yeah, so I was thinking about doing that, or I have a bunch of other stuff that could be awesome too. I was thinking about, I've been thinking a lot about having a component workshop, which I thought was a cool word that Brad Frost used for his thing. But kind of setting up a like code sandbox type environment for our components, which would kind of show different uses, have different demos, and have kind of like a flexy layout, so you could see how things, various permutations and whatnot. So anyway, hit me up. Tell me what you'd like to see in these streams. I'm going to be kind of doing something completely different next week, so you can tell me what you want to see. Anyway, thanks for sticking around. If you want to see those next videos, whatever they end up being, just subscribe and or follow me on Twitter, and you'll see those kind of links go out. Anyway, yeah, thanks for sticking around. I appreciate your time. Thanks for the help, actually. John and Adam, I appreciate your feedback on all those. That was really helpful. But yeah, next time I want to find something a little bit better. The demo is a little bit better with the code that I have. Have an awesome Friday and enjoy your weekend.